I wanted to fight Kamaru Usman, but he didn't accept the fight. Also, they offered to Prates, but he was injured, and Colby Covington, he rejected the fight. And I'm happy that Ian Garry accepted the fight. It would be a great fight.
Why do you think Kamaru Usman said no?
Honestly, I don't know. In the beginning, he accepted the fight, but then rejected. Maybe he didn't want to risk. Of course, he doesn't want to lose.
Your reaction, obviously, you wanted to get a fight, and then you saw Colby Covington is now fighting Joaquin Buckley next weekend. What was your reaction when you saw that Covington was now in Ian Garry's spot?
Yes, I don't care about Colby, but yes, they offered him to fight me, but he was just talking. When it came to business, he rejected, disappeared. And yeah, I'm happy that I fight Ian Garry. We're both unbeaten, and we'll see who's better.
Shavkat really is the boogeyman of welterweight. They offered him 4 fighters in total to take on short notice. Ian Garry, which of course he's fighting, and respect to Ian Garry for stepping up on short notice when he didn't need to. But there was also Kamaru Usman, who originally accepted the fight, but then rejected it later. Understandable. Colby Covington was offered as well, and he outright rejected it. Maybe because he's fighting Joaquin Buckley next week. But why wouldn't he want to fight Shavkat, which is a bigger fight? It would get him right back into title contention if he wins. Beating Joaquin Buckley puts him like a few fights away from a title shot, as Buckley's not a top-ranked welterweight like Shavkat is, right? It may be a more favorable matchup, right? Shavkat's a very difficult stylistic matchup for Colby, and taking him up on short notice would not be ideal for Colby's comeback win. But the 4th fighter was surprisingly Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates, who just knocked down Neil Magny, one of the fight nerds, was offered a #1 contender fight on short notice. The guy just came into the top 15, and they were ready to throw him at the Nomad in his 2nd ranked fight. And you know what's crazy about that? Carlos Prates accepted the fight, but he was injured. He had a broken foot, and this is what Dana was alluding to when he said he had big plans for Carlos Prates. This was the fight. He was wanting Prates to fight Shavkat on short notice, but he told Carlos to not take the fight once he knew that he was injured. He had to convince Carlos Prates to not take the Shavkat fight, which he offered him. Dude, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Carlos Prates would have been the fight of the aura. That is a fight I never thought that we would all want. If Carl starts knocking out everyone that he fights in the welterweight top 15, not just Neil Magny, if he KOs everyone else he fights, the showdown between him and Shavkat would be legendary. That's if Shavkat beats Ian Garry, which is not a given, right? It should be a competitive fight. You're starting to see the rise of the new generation of the welterweight division. The only difference is Bilal Muhammad becoming a champion who's over 35 years old changes a bit of the trajectory of that, but that's the quote-unquote older welterweight that all of these up-and-comers are trying to take out. But Kamaru Usman responded, not to Shavkat, he responded to the fans, because once Shavkat said that Kamaru Usman turned down the fight after accepting it originally, apparently a lot of fans were, telling Kamaru Usman he's ducking, he's scared of Shavkat and all this sort of stuff. This is what Kamaru Usman had to say.
Crazy to me, Henry, because I'm seeing online people go, oh, you scared? You duck him? You ducked him? You scared? You scared? I'm like, what? What? Exactly. I'm like, wait, what? What? This is the same sentiment that I feel like people are doing to John Jones. It's just like when people were your fans or fans of a fighter don't get their desired wish that they want, that's the fight I want. Then it's like, oh no, that guy must be scared because he didn't take the fight. Like, guys, shut up. Shut up. Yeah. We step in there each and every time. I have 25 or 20, 22 or 25 fights. I don't know how many fights, but you think everyone, oh, you scared. Yeah. Okay. World champion and defending belts time and time again. Oh, he's scared. Yeah. Shut up. Just because you didn't get what you wanted. Yeah. Guess what? It's like your mom telling you, no, you can't have that toy today. You can't have that toy. So shut your mouth. Instead, we got a banging fight. We've got Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Ian Garry.
Now, here's the thing. Kamaru Usman is not scared of anybody. I agree with that. This guy stepped on short notice to fight Hamza in a weight class he's never fought him before. If he's doing that, he ain't scared of Shavkat, right? Or anybody else. And he shouldn't have to take up a short notice fight again. Now, he accepted it originally, which is different. But I don't blame Kamaru Usman for not wanting this fight, right? I don't blame him for pulling out of the negotiations to want a training camp for a proper fight. And I believe that is going to be maybe Jack Della Maddalena. There seems to be a rumor right now that Jack Della is going to return against Kamaru Kamaru Usman. Nothing's official, nothing's confirmed, but maybe Dana or the UFC offered him, hey, if you don't want to take the Shavkat fight on short notice, we can give you Jack Della. And I'm pretty sure if that was an offer for Kamaru Usman, he would take that 100% over fighting Shavkat on short notice. It'd be too much, right? 2 back-to-back fights on short notice. Nobody is asking Usman to do that. He's already done enough with the Hamzat fight. And a legend like him deserves to get a training camp for another ranked contender. Because Jack Della, just like Shavkat, Carlos Prates, Ian Garry, like he's amongst them that could be a future champion, or at least a title challenger. That is the future elite of the welterweight division. So no, I don't think Usman is scared of Shavkat. I don't think he's scared of any fighter, right? He does bring up a good point. He was a champion once who defended his belt multiple times. But when he was comparing himself to John Jones, that wasn't correct. I mean, he didn't do what John Jones is doing. When he was a champion, he fought anybody that threw at him. John Jones became the heavyweight champion and is refusing to fight the interim champ. That is not the same thing here, right? Usman does not hold the welterweight belt. He can fight whoever he wants at this point, but if he holds the belt, there is like a requirement for them to fight the #1 contender. That's what the sport is. That's what it revolves around. John Jones is not doing that, or has said multiple times he's not going to do it. That is not the same thing here as Usman not taking a short notice fight against Shavkat in a non-title fight as a co-main event to a pay-per-view. That is not nearly the same thing. I don't know why Usman went to bat for defense of John Jones there. I don't know how the negotiations went between Colby and Shavkat, because it is only coming from Shavkat right now. But it seems like Colby wanted Buckley over Shavkat because he had the opportunity to fight Shavkat before the Buckley fight. That's what it seems like, right? Because he was not originally scheduled to fight Buckley. He had no opponent. It was Garry who was in the Buckley fight. I don't know how this all went, but he did take the Buckley fight over Shavkat. That's what it seems. The question is why, though? We don't know if Colby outright just rejected the fight. We don't know if he has some kind of reason he can't fight on that date, or he was just negotiating. And that was used to say that he was ducking the short notice fight against Shavkat. We have no idea. It could be any of those. I highly doubt any fighter just outright rejects a fight without any negotiations at all. They would at least ask for what kind of money they would get for the fight before accepting or declining it. The only thing is, Colby did accept a short notice fight against Joaquin Buckley the week after Shavkat. That has to mean one of two things. Either he is afraid of Shavkat and would not fight him no matter what, which I highly doubt. I don't think any of these fighters are scared of each other like that. I think most of the time it's going to come down to negotiations, and they price themselves out in negotiations or they don't. Not all of them, but that's where a lot of ducking comes from. If they price themselves out of a fight, and I'm talking about like unreasonably pricing themselves out, not like they asked for reasonable pay and then that was used as a negotiation tactic to say, no, he's ducking. At this point, we know a lot of examples of how it goes in those negotiations sometimes. Or Colby was negotiating and asked for too much money. Whether reasonable or unreasonable, we have no idea. Because him willing to step up against Joaquin Buckley, it could mean that he'd be willing to fight a lower ranked fighter for lesser pay. It's almost like what Sean O'Malley was saying before, that O'Malley would not fight any ranked fighter unless he gets paid more for those fights, right? Fighters are getting a lot more intelligent with how much money they should get for individual fights, not just championship bouts, all ranked fights. And maybe that's what Colby's kind of doing here too. We have to hear from Colby because we just heard it from Kamaru. He implied that he doesn't want to fight Shavkat and he shouldn't be called scared for that. I agree with him, right? These fighters aren't in any obligation to fight each other on short notice, especially. If they do step up on short notice, that's just more respect for them, you know? It's not like something they have to do. That's why Ian Garry, for an example, we give him a lot of respect. He's the guy that stepped up. And Carlos Prates too, respect to him. He was willing to fight with an injury. But the legends like Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, they know they're worth a lot more, right? They're not just going to step in there like some of these hungry up-and-coming contenders in their prime would be willing to do. You know, these guys want to prove themselves as champions and all that stuff, whereas Kamaru Usman's already done that, right? He doesn't need to risk that anymore. And as for Colby, he's made a lot of money. He wants to become champion, so it's a little bit different. He has more like of a reason to step up on short notice than Kamaru does. And we don't know how he's going to look against Joaquin Buckley. Maybe he looks better than ever, dominating Joaquin Buckley, or he might perform worse than he did against Leon Edwards. We have no idea. And just for the argument, I know there might be some people that will argue for Jones on this. Whenever we look at any fighter who doesn't accept a fight, there's always the argument, but what about Jones though? Everyone's saying Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall, but isn't he doing the same thing? No, Jones is not doing the same thing. Number one, Jones is a champion who should be fighting the number one contender. That alone is a completely different thing. And number two, Jones is not fighting anyone on short notice, right? Colby is asked to step up on short notice to fight Shavkat. That's a completely different thing than scheduling a fight against the number one contender. That's completely different. So there is no comparison with the John Jones thing here. If he looks good against Buckley, the narrative is going to be that Colby's back. He just had a bad performance against Leon, right? Maybe there is something to that injury that he had that made him fight completely different. We've never seen Colby fight like that ever in his career. And maybe the injury was the reason for that. And also, here's the other thing. I don't blame fighters, especially coming off losses, who haven't fought in a long time, to take a step down in competition. That's actually something a lot of fighters needed in their careers. Colby's not a champion. He's not someone that's holding up the division. And sometimes fighters like Colby who haven't fought in a long time, coming off a loss, they need that bounce back, right? They need that step down in competition to rejuvenate not only themselves, but also the division itself. Colby Covington beating Joaquin Buckley is going to make the division a lot more interesting, especially if he looks good out there beating Buckley. And as for Carlos Prates, that guy is just insane. Just accepted the fight with an injury. He don't care. He's ready to take on everybody, hurt or not, 100% in there or not. That guy is going to be a monster in the future. This guy has the most otherworldly power in the welterweight division. It's insane how hard this guy hits. And he's a technical striker to go with it. If he has the kind of takedown defense to stop Shavkat's takedowns and even Colby's and Usman's and stuff, I don't know who beats him. If he could develop the takedown defense, I mean, he just hits way too hard and he's way too slick technically in the feet. Combined with all of that, he's long, he's tall. Like, if that takedown defense is on point, it's gonna be very hard to beat someone like Carlos Prates. So interesting development in the welterweight division. A lot of moving parts here. Shavkat, the winner of Shavkat and Ian Garry is gonna get a title shot against Bilal. Most likely it's going to be Usman versus Jack Della. Or, yeah, I would say Usman versus Jack Della. I was going to say maybe Leon Edwards could fight Jack Della or something like that. But Leon might fight Sean Brady. You could do it the other way, though. You could do Usman versus Brady and Leon versus Jack Della. It's more of a complementary to each other's styles, because Brady and Usman are mainly grapplers of some form, and Leon and Jack Della are mainly strikers. So maybe it's a better matchup that way, but it also makes it a lot more interesting when the two styles are opposites from each other. And that would be Brady versus Leon and Jack Della versus Usman. And then we have Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. A lot of people can be interested to see how good Colby looks out there. And then Carlos Prates is just coming up. He's ready to steamroll the weight class and get that inevitable title shot.